Hey everybody, thanks so much for coming out. My name is Layla Grace, and I am the Vice President and Hike Coordinator for the American Primitive Trail Conference, and we are so excited to have everybody here. This is the first time we've been ever able to host an event in person. We've done a lot of virtual events, and this is the first time we've actually been able to do something in person, and it's even that much more special because, for those of you that don't know, Drew is from this area, and he was actually a Pine Grove resident at one point in his life. So we're really excited to have Drew here and share his journey on the Appalachian Trail and how all of that led to the creation of the American Primitive Trail and then to the creation of the American Primitive Trail Conference. If you're not familiar with his history, he's a Triple Crown hiker, so he completed the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and the Continental Divide Trail, which make up the three crown jewels of the National Scenic Trail system, as well as a number of other National Scenic Trails in his hiking career. He's now a resident of Bend, Oregon, and is just here on rest break before he goes out to finish the last 700 or so mile leg to finish the first scouting bout of the American Primitive Trail. So very proud to announce and welcome Drew McKendrick.
So I know what you're all thinking. He's a lot cuter on Facebook. And also, why is it in all of his pictures he's always wearing the same clothes? So for any of you that have long distance backpack, you may know that we, as backpackers, often pretty much just have a pair of clothes that are on us. And I flew in from California with just my backpacking gear because I was on the Pacific Crest Trail and doing some scouting there for the conference. And so I came with what was just on my back. And I'd like to thank a couple of people real quick. Tom, thanks for lending me some clothes. Mr. Tom Buckets, thank you, Tom and Penny Buckets, for bringing us some drinks, some beverages, and some snacks. So thank you so very much for that. And also, due to the weather today, this horrible weather we're having, it seemed like the best idea was to maybe have a backup plan. And I think it's actually feeling a lot more comfortable in here right now than it would be up on that roof. So I think we made the right decision. And for that, I'd like to thank Amy Bacchus for reserving this space for us. So, and then if we do have a thunderstorm, we'll be in here. So I just wanted to begin there. From here, this is going to get intense. So hold on. I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about a story of not my story and not comparing myself to the people that I'm about to speak about, but rather how they've inspired me in the work that I'm currently doing. So in 1909, James, you guys all know James Taylor, right? Yeah. Not that James Taylor. Okay, I'm talking about another James Taylor. I'm sure he's seen fire and he's seen rain, but he was a gentleman who was an avid hiker that in 1909 he climbed up a mountain called Stratton Mountain in Vermont. Climbed up, now part of this story is a little legend, so we'll stick with what we know to best to be true. But he climbs up Stratton Mountain and he climbs up a tree and he looks across his beautiful native Vermont. And he thinks to himself, well, wouldn't it be great if we had a trail here that went through Vermont, like a really long trail? Actually, we could call it the Long Trail. So the Long Trail has white blazes just like the Appalachian Trail. And as often people say the Appalachian Trail was built off of, that the Long Trail was inspired by the Appalachian Trail. It's actually the other way around. So some years later, a gentleman by the name of Benton MacKaye, who if you go into the museum, you're going to read all about him. He's often thought as the founder and the father of the Appalachian Trail. He also is in Stratton Mountain, same mountain, Vermont. Climbs up to the top of this mountain and climbs up a tree so they can have a view, and he looks across the Appalachians, and he thinks to himself, wouldn't that be wonderful if there was a trail that went the whole way through the Appalachians? Oh shoot, we could call it the Appalachian Trail. So the inspiration for both of these trails, the Long Trail being the longest, not national scenic trail in this country, but being the longest distance trail, first distance trail in this country. And the Appalachian Trail were actually inspired on the same mountain in Vermont where the Appalachian Trail and Long Trail go right over the top of the summit. So I had an opportunity to go to Stratton Mountain because I'm a thru hiker. I thru hiked this trail like 20 years ago. And so I got to Stratton Mountain. I knew about James Taylor, not that James Taylor, and also Benton MacKaye, and I knew this story about this inspiration from Stratton Mountain. Okay, is that better?
Yeah,
okay.
You have to keep the mic.
Okay, the thing, I don't want to blow you guys out, so I'm trying to find a medium. Usually people are telling me to tone it down, so anyways, so knowing that I climbed up Stratton Mountain, and I was like, I'm going to find this tree, like the tree. There's not really like the tree. We don't know if they climbed the same tree. Some of this is mythical in a sense, but I'm like, I'm going to climb this tree. I'm going to look out across the beautiful Appalachians and Vermont and have some inspiration. So I climbed up the tree, and after like not being up there very long, I was inspired, which was like, get the hell out of this tree. Like, what are you doing up here? So I got down out of the tree, and they happen to have a fire tower up there. I decided I was going to, this is 20 years ago, I decided I was going to sleep up in the fire tower. There's a trap door that I was sleeping over. And then, I don't know, midnight or so, the door started lifting underneath me, and I woke up and I moved over, and someone goes, oh, holy heck, there's someone in here sleeping. And so I said, come on in. And I don't know, these gentlemen just, they said that they climbed Stratton Mountain on every full moon. They were drinking something. I don't think it was blood. I don't think they were part of the local werewolf club. I don't know. They didn't eat me, but I wasn't smelling real great at the time, so that could have been a possibility. Anyways, what happens with the Appalachian Trail is, and I don't want to give you a history lesson today because there is a museum directly here. I just want to tell you how this has inspired me. So Benton MacKaye comes up with the idea of building the Appalachian Trail. His original concept was not just to make a dirt trail going through the Appalachians, but he actually thought that there should be communities connected about a day's walk from each other. We now have a shelter system, but his vision was more that there would actually be caretakers and people who lived up there, and there would be farms, self-supporting farms, and then people from the cities on the weekends could come up there and stay, and they would be able to stay in these different communities, and people would live up there full time. That was his original concept. How does that relate to the work that we're doing at the conference? Well, if you go to our website, you're going to see directly right on our homepage that we talk about 2 years of conservation and, through recreation and the connection of these communities. Because our intention is not to be building self-supporting communities around the perimeter of the United States, they already exist. What we would like to do, or what we've been asked and invited to do, is to already help them be more sustainable through recreation and through tourism and through becoming a trail town. So Benton's initial idea, though it never came to fruition, that was his original concept. After that, Myron Avery, who, if you read more about the two of them and their relationship, it was not a good relationship. Benton, being the founder of the Appalachian Trail, actually would leave the trail at some point in time, citing that he just could not work with Myron Avery anymore. Myron Avery was the gentleman who was actually out in the field, who was measuring the distances, deciding where the trail was going to go, and then actually building the trail. So he's known to have, they say that he left behind him two trails. One trail of the Appalachian Trail, one trail of like broken egos and like upset people, because he was grit. You know, he was also a graduate from Harvard, and he was a gritty man that was singular focused on something, and it took him going out there every chance he got an opportunity to, and be in the dirt and be working on trying to get this trail connected. And where Benton and him were different was Myron just wanted the trail on the ground, and Benton wanted this larger concept of connecting communities. So I could have built the American Perimeter Trail from my couch on a computer. I could have done that. I didn't decide to do that. That is the part of me that does do that. I'm the executive director of the conference. And of course I have admin work to do. So that is like the piece of me that I'm inspired by Benton, to have an idea and to see it through and to get people involved and find a way for them to be engaged in that. And then there's the part of me that just spent the last almost 3 years backpacking around the country by myself. That's the gritty person who's using the map and compass and trying to figure out where will we put a trail where one does not currently exist. And so I was inspired by both of these people. And when I think of the Appalachian Trail, it can't just be me, but what we bring to it is not just an organization that is mapping GPX files online, but we are an organization that, with your help and from people all around the country, are going to have the boots that are on the ground, that are forming this trail, making sure that it's safe for hikers. Benton, he had married Betty, who was very much involved in the suffrage movement of the 1920s. And so she was looking for rights for women and also for the right to vote. She struggled dearly with depression. Benton had been away. He had come to meet her in New York City, where it was seeming like she could do most of her suffrage work. And they were going to go up north to Quebec just for a retreat to give her some time. They went to Grand Union Station in New York City. Did I get it?
Grand Central.
Thank you. They go to the station, and Benton goes to buy the tickets, and he turns around and she's gone. And she has drowned herself in the East River. He didn't know. He didn't find out until later. He didn't know where she went. He didn't find out until later that evening when he was contacted that they had found her body in the East River. That was in 1921. He, during that time, there's been many descriptions. I don't think I need to describe what this man was going through at this point in time. And so he took his work and his energies, and he spent the next 4 years writing out what was going to be his plan for the Appalachian Trail and what would be the way of going about building this. In 1925, someone who's often never mentioned in the history books, Harleen Jean, a female, ends up being the secretary and is the one who actually set up the first conference in Washington, D.C. in 1925. There's no coincidence that we're called the American Perimeter Trail Conference. It is now the Conservancy, but 15 years ago it was the conference. The Pacific Crest Trail Association also was the Pacific Crest Trail Conference. We will be having a conference, a physical conference, probably in about a year. So I look forward to seeing you all there and having input with that. My own story is that I came up with the American Perimeter Trail, the concept of it, after hiking the Triple Crown and a bunch of other trails, but let's not go into it. But after that, I had come up with the concept of building a trail that went around the perimeter of the United States. The whole vision came to me at once. I've often been asked, like, so you hiked the Triple Crown, so you wanted to do something bigger and better. It was never my intention. I never wanted to go bigger and better. If I wanted to, I could have just gone and hiked the Triple Crown again, or done it in a single calendar year. You know, there are other things that I could have done besides this. But my whole vision was, I'm going to create as much of this as I can, and I'm going to totally make it public. I'm going to let it go. Now, I'm still working on that. Like, give me some time. But forming like the executive board, so I just real quick. This is Suzanne Benelli, our secretary, and this is Layla Grace, our vice president, and also our vice chair. Some of you may have seen Yvette Beatley, who's online, but she's in New Mexico and could not be with us today. Our prayers are with her. She is in the complex of where that massive wildfire is going on right now. So I decide, okay, it's now or never. I came up with this concept. I didn't do anything with it for 10 years. I didn't do any planning. Every once in a while I would contact someone and try to get some information about how this was possible. They would tell me it was impossible. So I go on to the next person that would try to agree with me. They would disagree with me. And so then I stopped listening to those people. And I just, in July of 2019 in Bend, Oregon, decided, okay, this is it. I'm out. I have $400. I've got to go 12 to 14,000 miles on that. I have gear that is, if you add it up, is 125 to 135 years old. My backpack, the straps were ripped. I'd sewn back, duct taped, and burned them with a lighter to keep that together. So that is where no sponsors and no supporters, no conference, not much of anything really going on, but a dream and some wore out tennis shoes. And so I started from Bend, Oregon. Right off the bat, I ran into see, you good? One of my best friends who is an avid hiker, I don't know if he believed in the whole dream of the American Perimeter Trail Conference, but he was going to be joining me for a couple weeks, and I was going to try to convince him to stay longer. And he died right before I left in the most horrific way that I can't go into at this point in time. I also had just had like major oil surgery in my mouth, and so everyone was telling me at that point in time, this is not the right time, you don't have the money, you don't have the backing, you don't have the support, emotionally you're messed up right now. you're not in a good place. You need to stay put. There's something that happened after that that I had no knowledge of at that time, and that was the pandemic. There wasn't a pandemic when I began. If I had waited and said, you know what, this is not the year, I can do this so much better 1 year from now, I would not be sitting here speaking with you today. Because it wouldn't have happened. Because I wouldn't have left next year. I would have stayed in Oregon. So I basically left Bend, Oregon. I went down south through Oregon, mostly on the Pacific Crest Trail, down towards Mexico. Had a horrible idea. I've had plenty of them, okay? So to turn around and go back up north and go through Death Valley, and for its namesake, it's not a good idea, and that is not where we're taking the American Perimeter Trail. It was an interesting experience. It was something that someone hadn't done before through self-supported through there, but it was deadly, and I almost got killed by, I'm not gonna go into the whole story, but essentially, I was like, I would sleep with my water right here, because I knew if I didn't have that water, I was a dead man. And I woke up one night, I heard some noise back behind my head, and there's like, I'm just like, what is that? I'm looking around for my headlamp, and then I'm like, where is my water? It was in a platypus or like a camelback, like monkey noses. What the heck? And I hear something behind me, and my headlamp, I turn around, there's a fox there drinking out of the drinking tube. I mean, to this day, I still think I'm lying about this, because I was seeing it, it's unbelievable. And so I start yelling, because this is my life. Like, I'm in deep trouble if this fox gets the water. I chase him off, he goes running off of it, but finally dropped it. And he had chewed like the heck out of it. I lost half my water, I survived. I ended up getting a gear sponsor out of it, so go figure. But that's the way that worked out. But after that, I turned south. I went to the Grand Canyon. I went through Nevada. I went through the Grand Canyon, and I cut onto the Arizona Trail. And then from there, basically across New Mexico. Arizona, New Mexico, I knew I could do, because I knew that over half the state was public land. But then I knew what was coming in front of me, and that's a place called Texas. And Texas not only is a long way to traverse, but it has under 2% public land in the entire state that you can fit major countries in. It has to do with the history. And I'm not going to go into that, but there is a reason why there's not a lot of public land in Texas. So I'm getting to this place, and I'm like, I have no idea how I'm going to be able to traverse this safely. I sleep in a tent every night. I drink from streams. And I was fully self-supported. Texas was great. It was amazing. It was beautiful. The people were great, except for the gunplay. I did accept the gunplay, and Mr. Whoever out there that was shooting at me, we're still not friends. So there was, as I went, what I'm trying to tell you is, like, on the Triple Crown, when you come into towns and different areas, you're very well received because it's a trail town. And when you come into town with a backpack and you're dirty, just like the folks we see around here, you know what they're doing. They're maybe out for the weekend, or maybe they're on a life mission to do a major through hike. When I was traveling through places in the country, they saw something very different from that. And I don't know if they thought, I don't know what they thought, but it wasn't good. And so I was often stopped and asked what I was doing. I would try to explain, I'm walking across the country, I'm doing this. And a lot of the times, like, I didn't know if they were gonna take me to jail or to the psych ward. Like, it was up in the air. I would get stopped for all sorts of reasons. One of my favorites, because I started asking the police officers why I was getting stopped. And one of my favorite one was, I had talked with this store owner, we've become like friends, I thought, in 25 minutes. And I left and I went outside to sit outside to drink a Gatorade, and he called the police. The police come, they had me there for like an hour, they run my ID and all of this. And I just sit there and wait, and finally the police officer is like, I'm sorry about that. I said, okay, but do you mind me asking what that was all about? You know? And he's like, listen, I'm sorry. The store owner called. I said, well, the store owner and I are tight, we're like this. And he's like, yeah, I know, he said so. He said, this guy came in, really nice guy. We talked for a long time, really friendly guy. But I think someone should check in on him because he has a backpack and an accent. And I said to the police officer, I said, well, I have a backpack. Well, what's about this accent thing? And he said, son, here you do have an accent. And I said, okay. So I would have, it was a mixed bag. During the Triple Crown, I never got stopped or harassed during that time. People in town were very welcoming of me, but because I was going through non-trail communities, it just would look confusing to some people. Some people didn't because I had gear sponsors, so a lot of my stuff would be fresh and like not clean, but just like more expensive. But anyway, so I learned a lot going through Louisiana and Mississippi. I continued over into Alabama, and the pandemic hit before I got to Alabama. It's actually when I was crossing the Mississippi. I talked with everyone I could figure out. I had gear sponsors drop me, I had gear sponsors break contracts. For all intents and purposes, the trip was over. Because I'm a professional backpacker, that means that I rely off of contributions and sponsors. I can't just make a decision to just do whatever I want out of my own pocket, even if the Appalachian Trail Conservancy is asking to stay off. I can't do that, and my trip is over anyways. So I talked with a lot of people, and they said, you have to go home. It's over, you have to go home. I hadn't seen a backpacker since California at that point in time, and I'm now on the East Coast. I haven't hiked a backpack. I've been alone this entire time. So I thought maybe I'd get on the Appalachian Trail for like a week or two just to be around people, like just to feel like somewhat normal, or like I was really tired of myself at that point in time. I mean, I was really tired of having conversations with myself. And if you've looked at some of the Facebook stuff, sometimes I'll post like a character that I came up with. I wasn't having multiple personality things. I would just come up with these characters of like caricatures of people I would meet in towns so we could have foolish conversations while I was walking. I know that sounds crazy, but go live in the woods for a while like that and you're gonna get there. When I got to the Appalachian Trail, I thought maybe I'd spend a week or two on there just to be around people and then maybe split off, because it wasn't informative for the long-term project, because I already have this, this trail is 2,200 miles long. I probably have 5,000 miles on this trail. So I know it well. I know the area well, I know the layout. And so for me, it was more interested in scouting out new areas that could be brought into a recreation or into the public sector of these for recreation and have access to. But when I got to the Appalachian Trail, the Appalachian Conservancy asked all distance backpackers to go home. So what I did is I came up with a methodology that was called a backpacker's approach to isolation. And it basically was split into two areas: interpersonal or soft skills, and that was like when the guy's shooting at you, like how do you talk him down? And then the other one was backcountry or hard skills. So I used this methodology to make my own route up through the Appalachians. At that point in time, I thought that this is the hardest thing I've ever done in backpacking, ever. I was wrong. but there was more to come. So, but at the time, I just remember thinking like, this is impossible. Like the amount of bushwhacking and trying to connect here and there. And then the other thing that came with that was extreme isolation. So Layla supported all of my supplies and food during that time. What I mean is, in Philadelphia, she made every single box that got sent to a post office. If it wasn't in that box, I didn't get it. If there wasn't a toothbrush in there and I needed one, I didn't brush my teeth that week, okay? What we did is we chose standalone post offices, and they exist all around this country that aren't attached to towns, and they're not attached to people. And so I didn't hitchhike to resupply like you would on a normal trail. I didn't hitchhike, and I would go to these standalone post offices once a week or once every 2 weeks. So sometimes carrying 2 weeks of supplies. And that is how I managed to completely isolate myself for many months. I knew going into this, reading up about what happens with people in isolation, I mean, it's used as punishment, right? So I knew what was coming. For some reason, I thought in my mind that I could get ahead of it, that if I had some information, that maybe in some way I would find some immunity to being a human being. I was wrong. By the time I got to Pennsylvania, the symptoms that I had read about from people being stuck at sea or locked up in prison or what have you were all the same. Extreme anxiety and depression. We're herd animals. It turns out that way. I tried to fight it. I fought the law, but the law won. You know, that's from an old song. And so I tried to fight my human nature, and I lost. So by the time I got to Pennsylvania, I was really feeling some suffering around just being alone for that amount of time. I was lucky enough to meet Layla for the first time and spend some time with her family. Suzanne, I met for the first time an hour or two ago, because in our community, they're all around the country, and when we do work, we do it on Zoom, so we haven't necessarily met in person. So during this time, this is what I was starving for. I didn't care about a hot meal. I didn't care about a warm bed to stay in. We call these trail angels, people that help us along the way. That is not what I wanted. All I wanted was to see one person, see you one day, and then the next day, see you again. That's it. It got that simple. That's all I wanted, was to see this same person 2 days in a row, instead of not seeing anyone or seeing a postmaster once or every 2 weeks. And then, adios, have a nice life. Fortunately, after that, it was one of the many times, hi, Basil, during many times where things would open up and close. And so during that summer, things opened up. So Michigan opened up, and the people of the North Country Trail were wonderful to me. And there were many trail angels that I got to stay with during that time, and I have lifelong friendships from that. I continued on as long as far as I could. I hit North Dakota, and it was wintertime. And so now I'm in winter, and I'm very ill from something that we would find out only in the last couple months, but at the time we were looking at it as an overtraining syndrome. And overtraining syndrome, your hair falls out. We're all adults here. You're impotent. You can't eat. You can't keep food down, but you keep on putting on weight, even though you're hiking 20 to 30 miles a day. And you just get weaker and weaker. So a lot of times we think about ourselves as hiking yourself into shape. I started the Appalachian Trail and I could only do so many miles, but by the time I got to the end, I was doing 20 miles a day. Me, it was the other way. I was hiking myself out of shape. I was getting worse and sicker as the time went. So we got to North Dakota, winter came, perfect time for me to go back home and spend another time with another inspiration, a best friend who was in hospice. And so I got to spend the last month of
for life with her before I decided to get back on trail. So got back on trail in North Dakota, and I told you this was going to be intense, guys, but this is the reality of this, and some of you know this because we were speaking beforehand. I was back on trail in North Dakota. I wasn't there for very long until I got a phone call I would never want anyone to get. And this is not the first time this has happened to me over the years because I've been backpacking for 20 years, but I get the phone call and it's always the same thing. Lou, you need to get on a plane now. And so I got that phone call. I've been biking and walking commuting for 12 years in Bend, Oregon, so I never owned a car during that time. And all through the winter, I just use a fat tire bike. If you've seen those with fat tires, they're studded tires, and that's how I got around during the winter. Or I would ski. And so that has been my life for over a decade now. My brother Michael also never drove, and he always rode his bike, and as he got older, the biking wasn't working as well for him, but he still walked everywhere, and it was his favorite thing to do. And he unfortunately, while walking here in Chambersburg this past summer while I was on trail, was struck by a car. I tried to make it back here before they took him off of life support. I didn't make it. Honestly, looking back, I probably should have called the trail. Well, I've not called it, but it's called it for the summer. I knew I was heading into a heat dome, and I knew I was running into hundreds of wildfires that I was going to be walking through and negotiating the next couple months by myself in the West. That was a decision that I made, and it's a decision that I made. And there was consequences of it. And unfortunately, this infection that they had not quite identified that was going on in my internals, that we're still trying to figure out what's going on. I've been through every test at this point in time. I came in with technically 4 days of closing the loop of the American Perimeter Trail and had to tap out after being out there for 600 nights and days. And my doctor, I got back to Bend, Oregon, got the proper medical help that I needed, and my doctor said, you had 1 more week of doing what you were doing and you would have died. Because your kidneys, your liver, and your gallbladder and everything is not happy with you. What I'm happy to tell you is I went on some medication here just in the past couple months, and I think it did it. Well, I mean, I know it did it, because the symptoms were so severe, whether I was in the back country or in the front country, or no matter what I was eating. We tried all kinds of diets, and nothing was working. And I mean, I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but so far, so good. That brings us to the present. And the present is that the American Perimeter Trail came from just being a route and an idea in my head to becoming something that's a reality. And that's why I created the conference, because I know that we're better together in this. You know, I like to think that I have all the information, and I'm the expert on this, and I know where it should go, and I know how it should work. And then there's that part of reason that comes in and says, Mr. Ego, there's many people out here a lot smarter than you, or know things more than you do. And so that's why we've started to form this community and the conference. Our work from here on out, and my life work, is to create the 14,000-mile long national scenic trail that is going to go around the perimeter of the United States. I hope to have this map for you by the end of the summer. And then now you can see rough traces of it on our website, but you will actually be able to see where it's going to land. Are we using the Appalachian Trail? it's still debatable. It's still debatable. My guess is we are going to be sharing part of that. The Continental Divide Trail, we are definitely sharing a footbed with them because we crossed the divide twice, once in Montana and once in New Mexico. We have great relationships with all kinds of people in these organizations that are out there that are asking us, including the Pinhoti Trail in Alabama, for us to come to them and share their footbed. And that's an honor, especially because in such a divisive world where it seems like there is so much competition and there's scarcity and what is mine and we don't share with you, that's not the experience that we're having. What we're having is the experience is saying that we're all on the same team. And that team does not care who you voted for. It doesn't care about if you have to wear your hiking clothes to a speech. What that community cares about is each other. They care about recreation. They care about the nature, the natural environment. They care about conserving and bringing more public lands or more lands into the public sector. And they care about giving us more recreational spaces, just like we're so fortunate to have here with the Appalachian Trail. Yes, I am a Triple Crowner. I take my inspiration from the Appalachian Trail. It was my first long trail, and definitely the first cut is the deepest. And I feel honored here today to be able, that I was invited by the museum to come and speak with you all a little bit about the work that we're doing. And I think at this point in time, I think we're there, right? Okay. I don't have a watch, so they take those from you, I guess, when you start backpacking. Hey, give me that. You don't need that anymore. The sun goes up, the sun goes down. But what I'd like to do at this point in time is, I didn't do a lot of war storying. I have a lot of stories to tell me, so if you guys want to hang around. We were talking about going for a walk. We're a little concerned about the weather, but please catch up with me and I will war story with you and tell you the worst things and the most beautiful things you want to hear, because it's all happened over the course of the Triple Crown and the APT. What I would ask though is with the questions, though I did start off like letting you know something about the history and how it inspired me, I'm not a historian. I'm a conservationist. I actually relate more to being a conservationist than I do a backpacker. I'm known for my backpacking, but the conservation is my work. And I use the backpacking to bring attention to the conservation work that we're doing. So please feel free to find us online at AmericanPerimeterTrail.org. There you can become what we call builders. Instead of our members are all called builders. So feel free to sign up there. We have an annual membership that we offer. Also there we have our merchandise. I'm not much of a salesman, but I'm just going to get through this part. Also, if you want to make contributions outside of being a community member, feel free to do that. That's possible there. And also, because this has come up, we have had people who just really want to see me finish this. And so this is not the nonprofit, this is not the 501c3. There is an option there if you just want to put money in there to make sure that I complete this summer. I started in Bend, Oregon, my home, in the middle of this plaza in town. It's got this big stone emblem on it that says Bend on it. That's where I began, and that's where I'm finishing the first week in August. If you're out that way, please join us, because we're going to throw one heck of an event, and we would love to see you. And so with that being said, I often say, our motto is "Let's build it," is our battle cry. And until then, fair winds. Thank you. I had to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for coming out. The board has a little surprise here for Lou. So, in honor of all that you've done, we would like to present you with this.
Thank you so very much. Say here, this is our logo. There's like an A and a P and a T in there somewhere for the American Perimeter Trail. This is actually a water. Did I get it right? Water. Okay, this is actually the Deschutes River where I live in Bend, Oregon, and this was created by Layla. So she created this design. So I don't know how you guys pulled that off, but this is great. I mean, should I do some more show and tell? Some more? Oh, okay. I've got another thing from our designer, but I'll show that to you guys later. Okay, thank you so very much. I'm honored. This is the first flag.
Yes.
This is it. Yes.
You guys talked about walking into Bend, Oregon, waving a white flag and surrendering, and
Yeah, I said, yeah, I have a big white flag. Like, I surrender. That's it.
we just changed his plan, so
Okay.
he's got the APTC flag. If anybody has any questions, we have a little bit of time for questions. Pass the mic around.
So does that mean you will start here and end up in August in Oregon?
Okay, so the tentative plan is, for me, like I said, I technically only have, like I could show you on the map, I technically only have like this much out of this whole entire thing that I haven't actually hiked. But I'm not, I have no intentions of going back through the American Perimeter Trail. I'm going to finish the last part of it. So what I'll do this summer, I have two options. Everything there is based on snowmelt. I honestly thought that maybe I was going to be leaving after this event. I just flew in from California. I thought I was going to be maybe leaving after this event and flying back to Bend, Oregon, doing some stuff, getting some things together and doing what I needed to do, and then heading out into the mountains. Because when I left there was no snow and they were closing ski resorts, and they don't catch up in March and April. But if you guys have been paying attention to the weather the last couple of years, you guys, I don't know, maybe you've seen that, like it doesn't make any sense anymore. So March and April, they caught up on snowpack. So which means I've done it before, it's very dangerous, and I would definitely be by myself. And then I'm just navigating the Cascades through snow for a month or so. So what I will do is I'm going to stay here instead of getting out of town. I'll stay here for a little while longer, and I'm going to return back to the Cascades and finish that last section. So, and if I didn't make that clear, I've already been through this part of it. There's nothing, it's not that there's not more work to be done here, but next time I come back, I'm coming in a vehicle. No more 14,000 milers at this point. So thank you though, great question. Yeah. Did I answer your question? Okay. I hope to be back here next year. Okay, but I just might be doing some driving. And there's even been talk of maybe possibly they only have 2 contemporaries in this museum. I actually, I'm from here, and I actually lived right down the road here as a very young man for 2 years in a cabin with no electricity, no water, and an outhouse. And so I'm not just local Chambersburg, I'm local Pine Grovian. So hopefully, they've requested some of my stuff from my initial Appalachian Trail hike. It's all ripped and destroyed, but I don't know why it still even exists and is in a trash can somewhere. But some of that still exists, and maybe they'd like to exhibit some of that. And if they do, I'll see you back here next year. A lot of the stuff's like that. That's why, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
as far as your following the trail, now you said that you're not necessarily going to follow the I was wondering, are you going to maybe follow part of the Great Eastern or something like that? Or?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We have invited members of Alabama Hiking Society, also the Pinhoti, and what is called the Great Eastern Trail, which is essentially a trail that's following the Appalachians. Like for instance, the Appalachian Trail, though there is plenty of Appalachians in Kentucky, the Appalachian Trail never goes into Kentucky. But the Great Eastern Trail does. So I walked through the Cumberland Gap in Kentucky when I came through West Virginia on the Appalachian Trail. It's just a very short, like some people do it in a day to cross West Virginia. I spent hundreds of miles in West Virginia on my trip. So we have invited them into the process of talking about that. The great thing about having a conference here in the future, and as more members come on, we get to have some more input into what that would look like. The Great Eastern Trail, though, just so you know, does only make it to Pennsylvania, so it doesn't, they don't have a northeastern area yet, so. That's right. So I don't know if everyone understood that. This essentially, like, from the conservation piece, trying to like protect more lands. The AT will always need your support. It will always need my support. I support the Appalachian Trail. They have done an amazing job here protecting their corridor. But among the long trails in the country, they're really decades ahead of, for instance, like the Continental Divide Trail. Okay, so we're starting a process that's hoping, as some of you may have noticed, as some of the trails get busier or get overused, or because there's been this kind of resurgence, I feel like, from the pandemic, of people wanting to be outside and to enjoy nature after being stuck inside, that part of our mission is that we want to be building in new areas, because it is from the perspective, if we don't build a trail there, then we'll build a strip mall. But strip malls aren't bad, okay? We all need places to shop and stuff, but there are beautiful places in this country that it can go either way. And so I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to going it more in the direction that I think, and the community that we're creating thinks the direction that should go. That has nothing to do with eminent domain, okay? That was something that happened back in the 1920s and 1930s with some of these other long trails. That's over. It's not what we're doing. That's not really even a thing anymore. So that's not what I'm talking about. Yeah. I'm talking about preserving our natural heritage here forever. So, and bringing it into the National Scenic Trail, bringing it in as a National Scenic Trail, so that it will have federal money and also be protected. For long enough for me, I think. One more? Okay.
We just got a warning from the state park that there is a severe thunderstorm about a half an hour away, so we don't want to keep you guys here for too much longer, so we can get
Okay, this is only going to take about 34 minutes to answer, so I think we're good. Ask a question about the trail. I'll give you a couple facts. The American Perimeter Trail, the entire trail that I hiked, I'm asked often, like, how many campfires did you start? So, anyone have a guess? 0. 0 campfires. Yes, please. Okay, so on the Triple Crown, when I had the Triple Crown, we didn't have phones or smartphones yet. So now, like, you had to know how to read a mapping compass back then. People just have hiking apps now, and they do that. It was very difficult in certain states to try to communicate out. We would try to schedule stuff on Facebook to let people know what was going on. I was horrible at it. Layla's laughing. I honestly, like, I was such a private person. I've always been an outgoing person. But I was such a private person that when I started this, that I wouldn't really post or share a lot. It's absurd. I'm trying to build a community, but I don't want to be part of a community. It doesn't make any sense. So we did the best we could. We changed providers, and we just did the best we could with it. And sometimes during when the pandemic started and I was doing up that part of the Appalachian, I could not charge my electronic devices because, like I said, I wasn't going to the town. And so then it's just, I know that's different. Like, so it wasn't just isolation, but there was no, like, I'm by myself that I can call my mom or something. There was none. Medical emergency, yeah, I'm just gonna have to, I mean, there were several, and I just dealt with them as best I could on my own. There were several medical emergencies, and I was able to hike myself out and get to a hospital and have them managed. I am forced, the board has forced me to carry a beacon now, so there is a beacon on me. I don't know how to use it.
Yes, you do. He's lying.
I guess
He
you
knows
just
that.
like pull this out and it's like, I guess this was the wrong time to try to figure out how to get help. It's like, I don't have any arms left. Jeez, how do you do this? So yeah, this summer, I mean, I'll have some contacts. There will be some contacts. I do the best I can. And I come from, when I hiked the Triple Crown, we didn't have any of that. So then I'm always honoring, because I'm like, I didn't need it 20 years ago, why do I need it now? And it's very strange that I'm old school and I'm 40 years old. Like, it doesn't make any sense, but that's been reality. So, any other quick question? Okay, so the Triple Crown, and I'm gonna answer this, and you guys will catch up with me, because obviously the park is concerned here for our safety. I appreciate that. The Triple Crown is when someone completes the full distance of the Appalachian Trail, okay, which probably most of us are familiar with. Our friend Bowens over here is going to be attempting this over the next couple of years. So you can look him up and read about his story. Then it would be the Pacific Crest Trail, which goes through California and Oregon and Washington. So Appalachian Trail is 2,100 miles long, okay? Pacific Crest Trail goes through Oregon, California, Oregon, and Washington from border to border, and it's 2,700 miles. So it's almost 500 miles longer than this one. And then the Continental Divide Trail goes straight through the Rockies, roughly following the actual continental divide of the United States, and it's 3,000 miles. So when you've completed these 3 trails, you're a Triple Crown.
Oh my God, half miles altogether.
For me, the Triple Crown is like, I think it's probably 8,000 or 9,000 miles, something like that. So with that being said, I think we're just going to start shutting things down because we've been asked to, and I so appreciate all of you being here. Thank you so very much.